Fagan, for coming on. It's a very difficult thing to do when you come on and you're just talking about your mental health. Sinead wanted to come on to talk about borderline personality disorder, which, as we kind of ran through it, it seems that it's greatly misunderstood. And we hear about depression and bipolar and anxiety and things like that, but not so much about BPD. And she was very kind to come on and very brave, and we thank her very much for that. Also, thanks for your support. Yeah, that goes without saying, or does it? Anyway, this week's guest is the owner of Balance by Shirley, and she is Shirley Dempsey. How are you doing, Shirley?
Hi, how are you, Derek?
I'm all right. I mean, we were just laughing beforehand. We picked the warmest day of the year to have this little conversation.
Yeah. Well worth it, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just for people who don't know, because this will come out a bit later. This might go down in history this day as well, maybe not that far, but like it's the 10th of July when we're recording, and it's particularly hot Sunday, but it doesn't matter. We're going to have a good chat. Shirley, we always start in the same place. Could you give us a short history of your upbringing, please?
Yeah, sure. So I am the youngest of 6 children. I grew up in Athlone with my mom and dad, went to school in Athlone, primary school in Athlone, and then to Our Lady's Bower afterwards. My grandmother lived next door. My cousins were all around. We had a great childhood and really family orientated childhood. And yeah, it was just sweet. It's great.
Very nice. And it's notable that someone from Athlone pronounces the T for a change, because I slip in and out of that, I'll be honest with you, but yours is very deliberate, and I'm sure all the people from Athlone listening appreciate that very much. We've all got to try a bit harder, is what I'm saying. So Shirley, when did you first become aware of mental health?
Well, my brother suffered from mental health issues really kind of by the time I was in first year in school. I would have been kind of aware of it at that point. And my parents were really good at explaining it to me. And we were always told it was the same as, it was a sickness, it was the same as any other illness. And, back then, like it's over 20 years ago, and back then it was kind of a taboo subject, people didn't really talk about it and things. And my brother actually passed away by suicide. So it was something that was really like prevalent in our family, and but at the same time it was something that I think now, looking back on how well my parents explained things to me, and it gave me a much wider understanding than I think other people would have had at that stage. So
yeah, I'm sorry to hear about your brother. Obviously, it's a big thing, I think, when you mentioned about 20 years ago your parents being, because it wasn't, we all know, like, it just wasn't a thing. And I don't know if it was Sinead last week, or it was maybe possibly the week before, where we talked a little bit about it was always people suffering with their nerves, and it
exactly,
just seemed,
yeah,
that kind of that was the kind of push away. Like, it was easy to just say that, and then there was no real explanation of what that was.
I know, and it would have been easier for my parents to say, oh, he had an accident, or those kind of things. And it was the fact that they really fully understood that this wasn't something that could be helped. It wasn't something like per se. It was like, obviously, I mean, medication has come on leaps and bounds, and therapy has come on leaps and bounds. Like back then, a doctor prescribed medication to you and said, off you go. There was nothing else around it. Nothing was explained. Medication was different. Most of the antidepressants that were even on the market then are gone now.
Yeah. Sure.
So it has just come on so far, and it's amazing to see that, and it's brilliant, and hopefully it'll continue down that road.
Absolutely. So when did a young Shirley decide to get into finance?
God, I don't know if I ever really decided to get into finance. There was a lot of other things I wanted to do. I wanted to be a beauty therapist, and like anyone that knows me would laugh at that now, because I wouldn't be great on that line of things. But yeah, I think I mostly just wanted to have the crack and wanted to have fun, and all my friends were studying beauty in Galway, and I wanted to go and live in Galway with them, And my mother one day said to me, I think she probably was very aware that this was not ever going to be something that would suit me. And they were very supportive and came to see the college with me and all that. And then she sat me down and she said, Shirley, you'll have to work on Saturdays now. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, you'd have to work Saturdays and probably Christmas Eve as well. How would you feel about that? And I thought, no, this isn't for me. Can't do that. So that kind of was what really changed my mind immediately. And I was always like really good at maths and that kind of thing. I hadn't even studied accountancy for the Leaving Cert, and but I was really into business. And yeah, I just took a chance on it and went down the accountancy route. It just ended up kind of working.
It's like the polar opposites of each other, where you're talking about going and, you know, just having a laugh and doing some beauty therapy and then going and doing accountancy, which is, by the way, I'm not saying it's boring. It's perceived as boring. I don't know. Yeah. Well, look, I don't know anything about it.
Well, I did some placements in practices, and I think that scared me so much. I thought, oh my God, what kind of decision am I after making here? Because practice accountancy is just was never going to be for me. Like, it just was completely the other end of what I would be into. But I was really lucky. I'd gone to college and I really wasn't feeling it. I found it really hard to settle in. I went to college in Athlone, so I missed that whole student life thing as well. So I was still at home with my parents. I lived across the road from the college. I went over and back. So I was still having my life where I was like a sheltered little girl, but I had to do all of this other stuff too. And so I found it really hard to settle in that. And I ended up applying for jobs to a couple of different banks and to a construction company. And I just really clicked. The lady that interviewed me with the construction company, it was actually her family's business. Right. And we just completely hit it off. I was offered the jobs through the bank, which I would then have to go off and go away for 6 months and do training and settle in different places. And they'd kind of place you into the cities you'd need to go to after that. And that kind of scared me, that I'd be told where I'd have to live and that kind of thing. So I ended up being offered the job with a construction company, and I was over the moon. And I have to say, I think it's really what shaped my career, at the start of my career at that point. You know, like, they were an amazing family, an amazing business, just gave me every opportunity. Like, I went back to college at nighttime. Anything that I wanted to do within the business, I was told, of course you can do that. Come on, I'll show you how to do it. And, oh, we can set you up with this. And, you know, nothing was ever out of my reach. You know, they were just brilliant. And it just shows how, you know, one or two people in your life can really change where you're going to go, like, can change your direction.
Yeah, and I could, like, you know, warmer than, well, the idea anyways is warmer than maybe a bank deciding to send you off to, you know, like, send off.
I know, and I had never lived out of home, like, so it was a scary thing as well for me, even though I thought I was very grown up. It was scary to think about leaving home and not knowing where I'd be going, you know.
Yeah. So, like, Balance by Shirley, then what, like, it's a big thing to set up your own company, like, and how long was that idea floating around your head for?
I think I always thought I was going to set up something. I was going to do something myself. I think it was always kind of there in the back of my head that, you know, I was always really hungry for all of the information. I wanted to see the whole picture of anything I did. So I was never kind of happy to sit with my job and this is my job and I'll just do this. You know, I wanted to know why I was doing this and where it was coming from and where it was going to. And yeah, I always wanted to get a holistic view of it all. So, but yeah, so I stayed in corporate finance. I worked for that company, moved on to an engineering company, went off traveling, did the whole traveling to Oz thing. I know you're a big fan of that.
Oh, I love it.
And came home, went back to work again, was in work for a few years and a good few years. And then, so it was in corporate finance kind of all the way through. I was with one business for about 5 or 6 years when I suddenly one day just wasn't able to move. I wasn't able to get out of bed. And I had sustained a back injury somehow. Now, I always loved running. I had taken up doing weights and things like that. So I don't know, was it a mix of, you know, not having proper training with lifting weights and maybe doing something a bit funny, or the years of running and not, you know, the wear and tear of that. But yeah, I just wasn't able to walk one day. I wasn't able to get out of bed. I was in excruciating pain, tried to get up, and every time I stood up, I passed out.
Wow.
So yeah, it was pretty serious. So I started down the road of trying to find out what was wrong, and it turned out I had a pretty serious injury. I have 2 slip discs, but they're central disc protrusions. So they slipped into my spinal canal.
Oh my God.
So they're inoperable to fix. But the only surgery that was ever the only option that was given to me was spinal fusion. So that was all really scary, a big scary thing, you know. And then I spent probably the best part of a year in bed.
Right.
And I had the company I was working for at the time, again, were absolutely fantastic. I was able to work from home when I wasn't high as a kite on medication. And then, you know, medication is so horrendous that, you know, I ended up feeling really down, really depressed, you know, didn't know, was this ever going to get any better? And at the same time, I felt like I needed to do something. I couldn't keep taking medication. I couldn't keep laying in bed. I felt I needed to do something. So the only time I really was able to get out and do anything, my now husband used to put me into the back of the car and drive me out to the forest. And I would just, sometimes I couldn't even get out of the car. I would just stay there. But I felt that when I was in the forest, I felt something, you know. And I just thought, there's something in this. Like, it was the only time I wasn't in pain. And I thought, oh, there's something in this. So then the idea kind of was born of, okay, I need to go into meditation. I need to do all this. So I, from my bed, studied meditation and got my diploma in that. And then decided, as I started by feeling better, and there's a whole road to the reason I ended up on the right road. But so I decided then I was going to try to marry the two. And I was going to try to introduce finance and meditation, the old love of my life and the new love of my life, and try to do something with them. And this is when Balanced by Shirley kind of came around.
We're going to get into that, because it was when you sent me a message about like fusing the two and stuff like that. I was like immediately curious how it's possible to do, and we're going to find out. But first of all, we have to read out an advert, because that's, you know how the corporate world works, you know. Oh, by the way, I just want to mention about the Oz thing. I don't want people to think, oh, you
hate Australia.
Yeah, I hate Australia. Australia, I'm sure it's a lovely place. I haven't been. Shirley is referring to a message I put up on Facebook about people going on about the time they've been to Oz, and that's the bit. It's like any person, because I was talking. My mom saw it, the message, the post, and she said, when she, like 30 years ago, it was America. Like everybody used to come back from America and say, oh, it's America. Like, you know, it's good that you're in Australia. I hope you enjoy it. I don't want to hear about it over and over again. All right. Because to me, it's just like a hot Great Britain, really. That's the way I see Australia. And by the way, I like Great Britain too. See, I'm getting it worse and worse. I'm just roping in.
Just digging it.
Just digging it. My best friend is English, right? Yeah, there you go. Okay, anyway, let's do the ad. Right. Fusion Training Centre, Monksland Athlone. A place to train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, martial arts and CrossFit. A great atmosphere with experienced coaches and a real sense of community. If you want to join the team, find us on Facebook at Fusion Training Centre or drop in for a chat. Fusion Training Centre. Train like a warrior. And breathe. Okay. We're done with the ad. The ad, I can close that copybook now. Okay. I don't know why I don't have them in the same copybook. Anyway, so this is the big question, I guess, Shirley. What do you do at Balanced by Shirley?
Well, so when the business started first, when I was trying to introduce people to my idea, it kind of came from, I had worked with businesses for years where I'd see some businesses had done really well and others weren't. And the people that hadn't done very well, it wasn't because they weren't hard workers. You know, they worked so hard and they gave it their all, and it still just wasn't working. And really, the main reason for that is they just weren't paying attention. They weren't paying attention to their accounts or to their finances. So they were doing everything right, filing their taxes, filing their accounts, but they weren't looking at it from a day-to-day basis. So what I brought to the table, or the route I decided to go down, was to teach people how to do their accounts the same way as if they had a finance department and they had someone doing it for them, that, you know, they were having monthly meetings, they were looking at their finances, because only by doing that can you see a trend and see where it's going to go and see if there's going to be dips, how you're going to manage that. You know, when there's highs, what to do with that money, rather than, oh, wow, I had a great month, I'll just spend all that now, you know, and not prepare for the dips. Like, you know, people would often say November and December would be big months, and then January and February do nothing, but there's no preparation. Or if there is, they'll say, I'll pop a few pounds aside, but they don't know how much they need. And if you say to someone, how much does it cost you to run your business? They might not necessarily know that. They know how much tax they paid, but they won't know what any of the figures mean. So I started working with businesses and teaching businesses how to do that. And I would generally do 3 months together. Some people would say 6 weeks together, kind of depending on how much you'd need to know, or how big the business is. And then we would meet up, twice a year, 3 times a year, that kind of thing, and basically have a review of your finances like you would with an account, with a finance team at an accounts meeting. So that's where that came from. And while I was in the middle of doing all of that, I started being contacted by people that were asking me about their personal finances. And I started doing some pro bono work. And it was always something that just niggled there in the back of my mind. And anyone that has set up their own business will know sometimes there's just this idea you can't let go of. And even though you say, that's not going to bring in as much money, or that's going to take way too long, or, it just, some things just won't leave you alone. So I had a couple of people that had contacted me, a good few people contacting me on and off, just saying that they were stuck and they were in a bad place with money, and could they work with me to do the same thing with their household stuff. And I started doing that. And so that's been kind of the other side of the business, and I'm absolutely loving it. So I'm working with private clients as well as businesses then. Yeah,
because I can imagine with because people will understand the business side of thing, working with businesses, I should say. But people don't, I don't know if this is true, but in my mind, at least, it's something that I would think of as people are a bit maybe nervous about asking for help. Maybe, like you said before we start recording, people don't know where to go. Even like there seems to be a kind of a vagueness to what we should do if we have our personal finances issues. If you have a business, you go, well, I'll just go to a business advisor or a financial advisor. The idea that a person on their own could go and get help with their monthly budget or yearly budget is something that I wouldn't have been aware of before you contact me.
Yeah, it's kind of it's funny you say that, because actually a lot of small businesses don't feel they've anywhere to go either.
Oh, really?
You'll go to your accountant, but they'll just file your taxes, but there isn't that help. And then you'll see a lot of businesses as you go around, and it'll be, financial advisors. But those financial advisors are to advise you if you have money to invest. But what if you don't? Or if you want to set up a pension, they'll advise you on where to set up a pension. I don't get involved in investments or pensions or any of that. I will always pass a client onto someone once they get to that point. But yeah, so there really was no help, like, other than tuning into RTE and saying, what did your man say is going to happen with the fuel, or this kind of thing. People just don't know, and they can be stuck and really have the best intentions and just not know what to do.
Yeah.
And it all comes back to, this is where it kind of circles back around again to the mindfulness side of things for both personal and business, is that to really get into that intentional spending and intentional living, that's what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is bringing an attention to everything you do. So with your reporting, you're bringing an intention to that, and you're paying attention to what it is you're doing. You're paying attention to what your money is doing. And the same then from your own personal finances, it's actually the very same thing. And we need to kind of remove that, I don't know, like, there's such a stigma around money.
Yeah.
And it's horrible to talk about it. You don't want to talk about it to anyone. You'd be embarrassed. Like, Mary down the road is after buying a new car. Where did she get that money? Who does she think she is? And then Mary might be in her house struggling, saying, I need to buy a new car because Joe up the road has a new car and everyone else does. And, and there's this shame around it. And no one's saying, well, actually, I'm after borrowing 20 grand and I don't know where I'm going to get the money to put it back.
Yeah.
And they don't know who advises you on that. If you go to your bank, they'll advise you to take a loan because they'll make money off it. If you go to...
do you think, like, you mentioned the shame about money and around money, and I was kind of thinking about it since you sent me an email, maybe you could explain a bit more of what that is, because when I was thinking about it, I don't know if I went down the right path with it, but before we started recording this, I kind of got more of a grasp of it.
Yeah, so basically, like, I mean, there's a Dr. Thomas Richardson who did a survey for the NHS, and it was around mental health and money. Now, I'm not a psychologist, but I've worked through the last recession, worked in credit control. I've seen the effects it has on people. I'm now working with private clients and seeing the effects of it. And this all rings so true for me. Like when I read the survey, when I read in the medical journal, I read the extract he did, and it was just so true. So apparently you're 3 times more likely to suffer with a mental health issue if you are in debt. And it doesn't matter what size that debt is. So that could be €200 in debt, or it could be 200,000 in debt. And like, that's massive. Like when you think about something, so what people would see as so unimportant, money is like, you'll hear time and time again, it's not important, doesn't make you happy, blah, blah, blah. But you're 3 times more likely to suffer with a mental illness. It's just baffling. But when you think about talking about money, and when you think about the relationship you had with money, or the relationship your parents have had and friends have, it's so true. There's huge shame around it. If you can't afford to go on a holiday, or you can't afford to go out on a Saturday night, or, you definitely wouldn't tell someone. Or you get into this other circle of everyone is telling everyone that they've no money, even if they have, so everyone is pretending to be broke. And that's even worse. Like, it's detrimental to your money mindset and to your mental health around money. So yeah, a lot of the work that I would do now is around money mindset and around mental health, like on that aspect of it, around money, and people kind of coming across money blocks and that sort of thing. So like, the big thing that people feel, they feel shame straight away, no matter how they feel about money, whether it's good or bad. And like, as in whether they overspend or underspend, they will feel shame about it.
Yeah.
So like, the first thing is our attitude towards money and our relationship with money is developed by the time we're 7 years old. So as young as that, anything that has happened from your caregivers, their attitude towards money, your grandparents, your parents, whoever it is that has raised you or helped develop your money mindset, teachers, all of this is all feeding into you. So every time you hear money doesn't grow on trees, oh, I can't buy that, we don't have enough money, that's giving you a scarcity mindset all the time. Then on the other side of it, you mightn't hear anything about money. It might be just not discussed. You hear absolutely nothing as a child about money. So now you have no idea about scarcity or abundance or how to manage money. So when it comes to the time that you have money, you don't know what to do with it. So you spend it and it's gone. So as early as that, we should be helping our kids develop good money habits.
Yeah.
We need to start retraining ourselves as if we're children. And how the same way you're going to teach your child how to have good money mindset is the same way you'll teach yourself how to have a good money mindset. It can be reversed. It's not something that, oh, that's it, you were 7, too late, out you go now, you're doomed.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, you see people, like, it's nearly, it's something that has so much shame around it. It causes so much anxiety. It's the feeling of no control. Isn't it? Like, you think of, you could be earning a lovely amount of money, plenty to feed yourself, plenty for to keep up with your living expenses, but maybe you're not doing something with it that you think you should. So maybe you're not paying into a pension, maybe you're not saving, and you feel shame about that. Or maybe you are, and you're feeling, you're keeping on top of things and you do have money, you have money put aside, but maybe your neighbor doesn't, or your sister doesn't. And then you feel shame around that, around having money. So it's on both sides of the coin, whether you're doing well and you feel like you are, taking in enough to cover your expenses, or if you feel like you're not. There's shame on both sides of that.
Yeah. And
it's all down to the lack of control. It just comes back to the same thing.
Like, you can kind of sense your frustration in it. And like, I can imagine it can be quite frustrating when the thing that kind of struck me there was, and I was thinking about the idea of, it is something that's kind of mentioned a bit about whether it's I'm completely broke or I just have enough to do this. you know, it's obviously it depends on the group you're with and stuff, and maybe the age of the group you're with. But there's something that's we really aren't, as you've kind of you know, brought up, that we're not that educated when it comes to money. And I wanted to ask you, and I know there's probably a big answer to this, and there's probably a lot of answers to this, but like, why do you think that there is such a lack of education in the schools with regards to learning about money?
It is a very big answer. So first of all, I'm not sure if there's any thought behind it at all. I'm not sure if there's any thought put into any of it. And it's something I've looked into myself, and like, it needs to be introduced in a syllabus in school. It needs to be part of it. We need to have an education. But it's not just in Ireland, it's worldwide. So the first thing is, when you start, you know, your financial freedom is kind of done on levels. So it goes from 0 to 10, where you'll be on a ladder. And the very first one, everyone starts in the same place. It's a dependency. So as a child, you're dependent on your parents. So you have no money. And the first stage of it being a dependent means that you're dependent on your parents, your caregivers, you know, all of these people to give you money. You would have absolutely nothing only for them. But as we move on in our lives, we would hope to, you know, become free ourselves and be able to manage our money and be in kind of a state where we can pay our bills at the very least and live a life. But what happens oftentimes is we're kept in this 0 level, because in a 0 level, you're now dependent on, if it's not your family, your friends, your parents, it's a bank. You become dependent on loans. You become dependent on that. You become dependent on social welfare. And what happens when you're in a dependency state? And so say I'm dependent on the state and on banks. So I'm taking out credit cards and I'm also taking social welfare. So what happens there is the numbers of people that are on social welfare rise. So the government can increase taxes because they have more people on social welfare in this section that they want to keep them in. Likewise, the banks want to lend you money and they want to give you credit cards, and they're keeping you on this dependency 0 level because that's ideal. That's the ideal scenario. You can't flourish. You can't do anything, because when you're in that state, there's more money to be made by the higher powers, by whoever, you know, whoever it is that you're dependent on are making more money because you're dependent on them. So it starts from an education in that perspective. Like, we can't move to the next stages if we don't know what the next stages are. And like, it's hard to say, you can't blame any particular group for wanting to keep someone from flourishing, or, you know, we're all doing it to ourselves. And likewise, we can't blame our parents for not instilling a healthy money mindset in us in the first 7 years, because it was the same from the generation before and the generation before and so on. So all we can do now is change our own money mindset and change the money mindsets of our children and start teaching it, because I don't know if I will be alive to see the day that they actually start teaching about money in schools. I don't know if I'll be, I hope that I am. I hope that I see the day that, but I certainly won't be leaving my children's financial education in the hands of any school.
Yeah, I understand that. And it's I remember we used to do civics. Like, I don't even remember what that class was about. I was going to say something else, but no, I will actually. No, we did religion as well, and that was a complete waste of time too. I'm not going to go into it, but
even PE, right? So you're doing PE now. Some people will definitely get a lot out of physical education and that kind of thing. Other people, that's not the right road for them to be active. Other people, you know, so even if we take that example, which is less controversial. So from that perspective, maybe 40% of the class are going to do well out of that. 20% of the class are arriving in with forged notes to say that they don't want to do PE. And, you know, but no one is like, how much is anyone really getting out of that?
Yeah.
Now you think about in introducing a finance module, a money module. Like, even when I say finance, sometimes to people, they're like, what's that? You know, and it's money. It's just money. That's it. And like, we need to take all that jargon out, all this like nonsense that, you know, people are using different language that other people can't understand. And not because they're not educated, but because it's not something that we were ever educated in.
Yeah.
You know, so like that needs to be the first thing. I would have so many people contact me to say they don't know how to read a payslip. So you're receiving pay every week or every month, and you have no idea what most of the figures on it, except that bottom one that says that's how much is going to go into your bank. But you don't know why you're only getting that amount into the bank. You don't know what's happening throughout the rest of it.
Yeah.
So because you don't know what's happening, you then can't ensure you're getting the most of it. So there might be tax credits that you're not getting. Like I know since COVID hit, loads of people, if they look at their payslip, will see week 1 written on it. And that's because revenue need to claw back some of the PUP payment, but they might not have gotten around to figuring out how much money you owe from the PUP payment. Or maybe you didn't claim any PUP payment, but they've just automatically put the whole country on a week 1. If you're not on a normal basis, you're not paying the right tax. Right. Unless it's been agreed with revenue that you will pay back a certain amount every week, and that's why you're on a week 1. So everyone needs to check their payslip, make sure it says normal on it. If it's not, contact revenue, ask them why. Ask them how much you owe and what way they intend on clawing it back. But you see, there's a fear around it because people don't know how to save when they call them. You know? Yeah,
I think people are worried about that kind of, it's like when you talk to a doctor, you never talk to a doctor like you normally talk to people. It's almost like you're afraid of the, you know.
Yeah, if he's going to tell me I'm going to die, he'll probably tell me.
But it's almost like as well, though, you know, that kind of idea of like an authority figure where you're a little bit not scared, but you know what I mean? There's a little bit of nerves to the idea. And I think that goes when you feel that you don't know anything about money or finance or your payslip, as you say, and you ring up someone who you believe knows everything, like the oracle, and all of a sudden you're not speaking like you normally would speak.
Yeah, it is completely based around fear. And the big thing is, all of this is, Derek, all of this is fear-based. Every single part of you managing your money mindset is fear-based. And it's what's keeping everyone down. You know, like say, because of COVID, everyone had to go on and manage their own taxes through Revenue Online. And everyone was pushed that way. Go to Revenue Online, do it that way, claim your PUP payment online through mywelfare.ie. You know, it was all pushed that way so they didn't have to take calls, but no one knew how to do it. And I started having people contact me saying, like, you know, I need to go in and file this Form 11. What the hell is this Form 11? How do I do it? You know, like that should be taught in school. Yeah. Everyone needs to know how to file a return. Like that's how you claim your medical expenses. But people aren't claiming their medical expenses because they're afraid revenue are going to tell them they owe them money.
Yeah, that's a big thing as well, isn't it? But it's really starting, like you said, like you're 3 times more likely to suffer with mental health problems through, you know, your money and stuff like that. But it would be, it's kind of nonsensical then to remove or not even remove, but just not have the basic, you know, learning in schools with finance to study this stuff and know what we're talking about, and then we can like cut down, because we were talking beforehand, and you know, money, and you money problems, you start having mental health problems, you may have to go to the doctor, you may have to go to therapy, medication, again, all that adds up, and it's like this vicious cycle. And I don't know, it sounds like we need to start a revolution or something, but like we can kick it off right now, I don't mind, but like but it is like I can't imagine what it's like for you. Like I already said, it's like it must be very, very frustrating to know these things and to kind of realize that a lot of these things could have been prevented a long time ago for people.
You see, we're still coming across, like we spoke about my brother, and that was 20 odd years ago, and the amount that things have come on in 20 years. And, you know, the awareness of mental health has only come around kind of like, almost like a revolution. Like, you know, and it's amazing. And it's amazing. Kids are being taught about it in school and, you know, all these things. And so maybe this is the next thing.
Okay.
Like, maybe this is the next, you know, maybe it is time for everyone to stand up and say, well, look, our kids need a financial education. We don't all know how to give our kids a financial education. So let someone that does know how to do it, you know, or educate yourself. As I said, if schools aren't going to take control of it, we need to educate ourselves so that we can do that. But definitely, I think something needs to be done when it comes to teaching in schools, even just a simple household budget. Like if you talk to a teenager now, unless they're like Warren Buffett's kids or something, and you ask them, what an asset is and what a liability is. They have no idea. And in fact, if you ask a 40-year-old now, I'd say a lot of 40-year-olds don't know what the difference is in an asset and a liability. And like, so we kind of have two ways of spending, and you'll see a difference in a multimillionaire spending and someone that isn't a multimillionaire spending. And you'll have people that, you know, they get rich and you'll still see them going bankrupt.
Mhm.
And we wonder, how can you be loaded and lose all your money?
Yeah.
And the answer is, just because you have money doesn't mean you know how to manage your money.
For sure, yeah.
You know, so you
Yeah.
can win the lotto tomorrow, but if you haven't been able to manage €200 a week, you're certainly not going to be able to manage 2 million.
Yeah, and I would point people in the direction of Nicolas Cage. If you want to see someone who lost all their money, and just read all the stuff he bought. But the idea then you mentioned about like the mindful approach, the holistic approach to like finances, and people might know how you know, join the two together.
Yeah, so it comes back to money mindset work. So, and of course, as I said, being mindfulness, really, like people talk about meditation, and meditation is a tool that we use to strengthen our mindfulness, to strengthen the muscle. You know, so when you meditate, you're strengthening your ability to be mindful. So mindfulness really is an awareness, bringing an awareness to everything that you do. Be that around your money, around intentional living, around any part of your life. Like I've often told a thing I'd heard years ago about, you know, when a soccer player goes to take a shot in football, and you say, oh my God, did you hear the crowd just when you went to take that shot? And they've heard nothing. And they've heard nothing because they have trained their mind to doing one job, and that's it.
Yeah.
And we need to do that around our money. So that's where the mindfulness side of things come into it. But I have been asked kind of, you know, people find it really difficult to meditate.
Mm-hmm.
And
why are you smiling for?
Because no, I think the majority of people find it really hard to meditate. I think there's very few people that are comfortable with just sitting.
Yeah.
And not having a focus or not having something to focus on. I know you spoke about a guided meditation, which is definitely, like, I think if someone says to me, how do I start meditating? Point one, guided meditation. Yeah. But it's not always possible to do a guided meditation. So generally, if someone is sitting down to start into working on their money, and, you know, they need to just bring themselves into that point, I would say, you know, maybe take a few minutes. You're not going to listen to a guided meditation, but you could light a candle and just watch the flicker of the flame. So you're bringing your attention to a particular thing, the flicker of the flame. And by doing that, you're automatically kind of drowning everything else out. Or there's another one, the starfish method. And it's where, you know, you take a breath, you breathe in until you get to the top and you hold it. And then you breathe out when you're going down, in until you get to the top, hold it, out until you come down. So it just takes the 5 fingers and you run your finger along it, but you can do it where no one can see.
Yeah.
And it just gives you those, you know, 10 or 15 seconds of really bringing your attention to something else, so that it can take away all of the emotion around money. It can take away all of the fear, all of the shame. And then you're ready to sit down and actually start looking at your finances and looking at your money, you know.
Where do you get your mindfulness from? Is it from meditation alone, or is there other practices that you use?
Well, I kind of a few years ago, I've always had a huge interest in different lifestyles and that kind of thing. And it's harder and harder as you have children.
Yeah.
You know, like I would have had a zero waste household for a while. That's impossible now, you know, like there's a lot of things, but basically I live an intentional life. So people are always asking me, you know, what the hell is an intentional life? And it's not always easy to have everything have an intention, but I try to make decisions based on an intention. So based on what my goals are and what my beliefs are, every decision I make in the day will be towards something. So if I decide, if you said, let's have a chat on the podcast, if that's not something that sits well with my beliefs or with my goals, or, you know, with, if I don't feel we're aligned, it'll be a no.
Yeah.
I don't have time. That's it. I'm sorry. And like a lot of people kind of get busy, and you're like, we're all so busy. Everyone's busy doing stuff all the time. that we don't have time for ourselves. We don't have time. Like if I said to someone, did you do a budget for your pay this week? It's try having the time to do that. You know, and they didn't have time to do it because they're busy doing all of these things that aren't aligning with them. So I think the meditation was a tool for me to be able to make decisions and to be able to live a lifestyle that I wanted to and be okay with it. Because it's really hard if you're into a certain lifestyle to then have kids thrown in the mix and not be able to do that. You know, and you have to kind of adjust all the time. So it's my way of helping me to adjust.
Yeah.
You know, and still have my lifestyle, but
yeah,
know,
well,
children as well.
It's I think when I think of things that I do mindfully, I used to hate that word mindfulness. I really did until I started the podcast. And then I realized that everybody that came on, well, not everybody, obviously, but people that came on spoke about it, and they spoke about it so well. And it became such an appealing idea for me. So I thought to myself, like, where will I, where can I practice it? And then I kind of realized, well, I love doing the dishes, and when I do the dishes, I'm not thinking about anything but doing the dishes, and that was mindfulness. And then I realized there was a number of things I did mindfully, ironically, without thinking about it. But the whole thing of, I guess the hard part for doing your budget, or working with your finances mindfully, is that it's something that you deep down don't want to have to deal with. Like, you don't, it's like it's homework. And I think, and I want, like, I don't know, you'll be able to tell me, I suppose, but like your clients getting into that kind of mindset of, all right, this is for the benefit of myself or my family or whatever, but I have to think of it mindfully. Yeah, I don't want to do it like, because it's a pain and it's going to cause me worry. It's, again, going back to the whole thing about money being such a big part of our lives and such a big, like, worry in general, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the first step, it's the same as, we teach our kids, or we're taught as children to develop these habits. So we get up every morning, and I mean, it's no big secret from the most successful people will say the first thing they do when they wake up is make their bed. That can be a really difficult thing for someone to do, or for someone, like, who am I to say get up every day and make your bed?
Yeah.
Because that step in itself can be really difficult. But you do find when you get up and make your bed, the next thing falls into place, and the next thing falls into place. And it's that atomic habits thing that book Atomic Habits talks in depth about it. And it's like one thing ignites the next. And it's the very same with your money. It's the realization that this is not going to get better unless you help it. You need to manage your money. You need to tell your money where it's going. So you don't go out and buy a car. Say you get a paycheck of €500 every week, and then you decide you want a new car. So that's €100 a week out of your pay. Okay, so now you have €400 and you need to live, and you need to do this and that. So that's keeping you in the cycle of earning money, spending money, earning money, spending money. But it's when you stop that and you're able to put that money into an asset. So an asset will make you money, a liability takes your money away. So you decide that €100 I was going to put into a car, I'm now going to put into something that's going to make me money. So say on a bigger scheme, if we say, if we start this off as a childhood and you start teaching your kids about it, and they buy a house and they rent that house out, now that's an asset. And the money that's left from that, they can buy a car off, and it costs them nothing. And it's those kind of things. It seems so far out of our reach, but it's actually not. It's far out of our reach because we're not managing, we're not taking the first step, we're not making the bed. So the very first step is just to start writing down what you're spending. Start writing it down. Don't try to take huge leaps and say, oh, sure, I'll never be able to buy a house, or I'll never be able to do this. It's those small little steps. It's bringing awareness to it, bringing the mindfulness to how you spend your money, just writing it down. You can see it on paper. You can see where your money is going. And it'll be really simple to start seeing where, oh, actually, if I put that €20 off the credit card will be cleared in 6 months. And so it's those small things, but it's about bringing an awareness to it. And when you, like, so say when I work with someone, or when you work with someone like me, they kind of take care of the money mindset side of things. So they get you into the right frame of mind for doing it. And then you're doing the work, like writing out where you're spending your money, creating a budget together, and you introduce it into your family as well.
Yeah.
You know, like it should be something that we should be really proud of. Like when we're telling our kids, oh, this is the money for the mortgage, we should be saying that money is for a mortgage because we're so lucky because we have a house over our heads and we have this, you know, and that's when you start bringing in a lovely positive attitude to paying bills, or
Yeah.
you know, we're privileged we have bills.
Yeah.
You
You're
know,
right. Like starting the education yourself, if the schools aren't going to do it, I mean, it's going to have to
exactly.
start somewhere.
And even for ourselves, you know,
Mm.
as I said, we need to teach ourselves the same way as if we're children again, you know,
Yeah.
start from scratch and just do it that way.
I have written down here for some tips, like for the listeners or the viewers or whatever. But I guess that's a tip in general. A really good tip is to write it down.
Write it down, yeah, bring awareness to it. Like I know I told you I had kind of taken on a few clients, a few personal clients when I was working with all the business clients. And it got to a point I actually didn't have any space to take on any more clients. But I was going to bed at night and really concerned about it because I know it's such a massive thing for people. Like it really is. It's such a big deal and it's so simple, you know, and it's because we work it all up in our heads and we make it seem like it's like rocket science, and it's not. But it's just because of all of the blocks we have around it, we find it really difficult. So I've been waking up at night worrying about people and all this kind of thing. And I ended up, I think I mentioned to you, I put the program together. And so, you know, it's an online course. And even with putting the online course together, it's called an ebook because sometimes even the thought of having to do a course can be too much.
Yeah, it's true.
You know,
Yeah.
and like around money, if I said to you, oh, I'm going to give you this course you can do in money, you would say, oh no,
I'll leave it.
yeah, like, you know, that's how much we hate it.
Yeah, no, it's you're absolutely right. And you know, like when I write out questions sometimes, after speaking for a certain length of time to yourself, like, you know, the questions kind of will change. And there was a question I was going to ask about how rewarding the job is, but on the flip side of it, like you just mentioned there, like you're taking some of this home with you as well, like.
Yeah, I think I was working, as I said, in credit control for the last recession that we had. And the things that I brought home from that were just so horrendous because I couldn't help it. I couldn't stop what was happening. I was calling people looking for money because that was my job at the time. And these people I knew were suffering. These people didn't know how. It wasn't the people. There's very, very small percentage of people that don't want to pay their bills. You know, people want to pay for their stuff. They want to be able to pay for everything, and they just can't figure out a way around it. So I think on the flip side of it, I think we're probably on a little bit of a roller coaster with finances over the next few months. But I think on the flip side, this time I feel like I can actually help. You know, I can actually do something about it. Like the last time I ended up heading away to Australia. Again, I bring up Australia.
Yeah, don't tell us any stories though, if you might.
I just couldn't stay. Couldn't stay here.
But can I ask them, because this is one thing that I've noticed recently, and now I don't drive, so I'm on the bike, but I've never heard so much talk about rising fuel, and this is just one thing. Obviously, like the price of living is rising in general. Like, how much of that kind of worry are you hearing about?
A lot.
Yeah.
And there's even people I've been working with where we've been working on money mindset for months. And something as simple as hearing something on the radio can undo months of work. You know, it really can. And like what I've been trying to say to people is, you might not necessarily be listening to the news or listening to the radio, but it can be on in the background. And it's all those messages that we're hearing that, like, that is not going to benefit us. Us being told we're on the brink of a recession is not of any benefit.
Yeah.
Us managing our finances should be happening whether we are on the brink of a recession or not. Like, it's neither here nor there. And what's happening is the more we talk about the recession and the more we talk about the rising cost of living, the more we're talking ourselves into a recession. So like, I'll give you an example. Say you were supposed to go away for a weekend next weekend, and you've said, oh Jesus, I'm not going to go away because sure, the price of fuel is going up, electricity is going up, everything is going up. I'm not going to go away. Now, say you haven't really felt much of a pinch yet. You've heard a lot of people talk about it. Now, don't get me wrong, people are feeling a pinch, but rather than like I'll see it through before I go back to it. But so you're not really fully feeling a pinch yet. You're still able to live. You're still able to go shopping. You're still able to do all the things you wanted to do. But now you've cancelled your trip away. So because you've cancelled your trip away, the hotel now they have 2 staff they don't need to take in because you've cancelled. So they don't need a cleaner and they don't need an extra barman. So now that cleaner and that barman who are living in Athlone don't go out this weekend because they're down 2 shifts. So now the pub is affected by it. The shop that the girl was going to buy her clothes in to go out is affected by it. You know, the knock-on effect it has by one thought that's in your head that's not even true.
Yeah.
You know, and this is what happens on a massive scheme. We're all being fed this information all the time, and we're talking ourselves into a bigger recession. Like the price of like a barrel of oil has not risen. A barrel of oil has gone down now, but fuel is still high because we're all talking about the rising costs. Sure, like the money is being lumped onto it because we're all expecting it.
Yeah. Do you know what another thing? Another thing about Shirley is like I've seen just on Facebook, scrolling through Facebook, like people taking pictures of you know those boards with the number, you know, the price of the, you know, and you, like that. I don't ever remember seeing that. I probably did at some point. There was probably another rise, but it just you can't get away from it. Even if you don't drive, you can't get away from the fact that this is happening. And like you said, like I have an electric bike, and then if the electricity goes up, well then that's, you know, going to be on me then because I'm plugging it in. So it's really interesting how it does like get into our minds. Even I don't even watch the news, and this kind of stuff seeps in somehow. It's these other ways.
Take you for example. If you have never had a budget, you've never planned, but you will feel a pinch because the price of electricity is going to go up, and that's going to affect you with your bike. So the fact that you have never had a budget, like you sitting down now to do the work, is going to way outweigh anything that you can do with taking photos of the prices going up. It's going to way outweigh the amount of talk that you can have with people. You know, what we can do now is sort ourselves out. Get ready. Try to clear off if you've debt. Try to start clearing off some debt. Free ourselves up for something. You know, start pouring your intention into your own finances rather than global finances.
Yeah.
You know, like we can all sit and take pictures and do all that. And like I have the Instagram page, and I get an awful lot of questions about the cost of living things, and I don't talk a huge amount about it for that reason, because the more light that we give it, and the, you know, it is there and it is happening, and the government are going to have to do something, and hopefully they will, and that's kind of been taken care of. But you can't block your own work by putting the onus on someone else. You need to take control of your own finances. You are still getting the same money. Yes, your bills might be higher, but guess what? Posting something to social media is not going to fix that.
It's just similar to kind of what happened, and this is a different thing to finance, but it's a personal thing recently where I was worrying about all this stuff, you know, and I just couldn't get away from it. And I knew that like my anxiety was being affected, and I thought my moods were dipping in and out, like, and I was kind of like, you know, constantly thinking about it and worrying about it instead of kind of doing something about it. And then I went back to therapy last week, and then all of a sudden it was like, look, it was not saying it was easy. The therapy was very difficult, and we have a lot of things to discuss. But the idea that it was being proactive about it, and that's what you're saying, it's like dealing with your own thing instead of, because I was worrying about other things that were beyond my control. Like, you know, like with OCD, like I had OCD in my house where I want things to be in certain places, and that's fine if I want to be like that. But I was doing it in the gym. Like I was like, that shouldn't be there. That should be lined up. But it was all the stuff outside of, you know, my control, rather than bringing it back. And as you say, like sitting down and looking after yourself, doing your budget, sorting that out first, and then going from there, really.
Exactly. Yeah. Start controlling what you can control for now. And like, you'd be so surprised when you see the level, like once you start trying to take control back, when you start seeing how the levels of anxiety are easing. And yes, those first couple of weeks are really tough, because the first thing you have to do is face it. And that's hard. Like, you know, once you start facing up to, oh my God, I can't believe that's how much money I owe, or I can't believe how much I'm overspending, you know, but once you start facing up to that, the control you get back is massive. You know, like it really is. And knowing when you go to bed at night, you mightn't feel like a millionaire, but at least you know how to manage what's coming in. And at least you're taking small steps to get towards the bigger picture.
Of course,
You
yeah.
know, and when you take that away, you won't believe how much space there is in your mind for other things, like for things that we should be spending time on.
Of
not
course.
for bloody, like, God almighty, what is money? You know?
Yeah, well, yeah. Speaking of that, what do you like to do in your non-existent spare time?
Well, actually, I do take a good bit of time. I hang out with the kids a lot, obviously. They like to, I don't know, stay around here all the time.
They're quite young though, aren't they?
Yeah. My youngest will be 1 next week, and then I have a 3-year-old as well. So and then I have a 13-year-old stepson as well, so he's great crack. Nice. But he kind of, in fairness, he's great with helping out with them, so that I get a little bit of time here and there.
Perfect, babysitter.
Yeah, but yeah, I have this year, since January, I've started going back out to the lake to swim. So I used to sea swim a good bit, and obviously now it's a little bit more difficult to get to the sea. So I started lake swimming in January, and just head out with one of my girlfriends. Like, we try to get out twice a week, but probably once a week realistically. And I just get out in nature every single day.
It's cold. That lake is cold though. I went in about 4 weeks ago, and I got into my waist, and I was like, I can't do it. I just couldn't do it.
You know what? Some days we just do that. Some days that's what it is, you know, and like, I'm a big believer in not pushing your body too much. You know, I do think, I know we have to push ourselves a little bit, but you know, there's some days that's all you feel like, and that's fine. And I kind of feel like once your feet are connected to the earth, I'm happy enough that it grounds me enough that I can come back then and live my best life.
And I thought it's one of those things where I think I started in the sea. I think it might have, but when I came back, obviously I'm only in Dublin every so often. So when I go up there, I go into the sea, and I got in there recently, and it was freezing cold. It was really cold, like, but it is absolutely lovely, like, because like you said, the grounding is one thing. That was something I wasn't aware of until I had a guest on chatting about the grounding, and I didn't know. Again, it was one of those things where I was like, I don't know what that means. But then when you do it, when you're again mindful of it, going into the sea, and you've got the sand beneath your feet or whatever, you know, if you're in the lake, it is really, really nice.
Yeah, and it's all the negative ions and things, you know, like it's just earthing us, and it's amazing. But I even, like I do with kids, I take kids' shoes off, and you know, at first they're like, oh my God, I don't want to touch that grass. That's horrible, you know, but they get into it. And now, like, the 3-year-old just whacks off her shoes and she's gone. And nice. So even like we do it in the garden, even though I'm not sure what kind of ions are in my garden out there.
So ions are in every garden.
It's nice to connect to the earth all the same, you know.
Yeah, and I don't know, do you do the connecting to the earth in the frost and stuff? I've seen people do it on the grass, the frost.
But yeah, it was my first year to start intentionally doing it this year. I didn't realize when I was heading out to the forest when my back was so bad. You know, I was saying there was times I wasn't able to do anything. Only I would just put my feet on the forest floor. And I didn't know anything about earthing or grounding or any of that kind of stuff at the time, but it made me feel better. Yeah. And it's only this year that I've really started learning about it and things. And I was like, oh my God, that's why I felt better. You know, that's why I felt I didn't need as much pain medication. You know, I just was better. So yeah, I think I this year I started, the very first day I did it, it was very cold, but I did probably last maybe 3 or 4 minutes of my feet in the frost. Yeah. So that was fine. But we'll see how next winter goes.
Yeah, well, we will. And can I ask just before I go, how's your back now? Is it better?
I don't know if it'll ever be better, but I am doing a lot better. So, you know, I haven't had an episode of my back being really bad since my daughter's christening. So that would be 10 months ago. I had my last bad episode.
Okay.
No, yeah. Well, yeah, I was away actually. I was on holidays. So that was a great one. It just gives up every now and again, like, but even now today I was only saying, God, I can tell it's time for me to start concentrating on it again. You know, you can kind of feel when something's coming on.
Yeah.
I just need to be more intentional about what I'm doing now again for the next few weeks.
Of course. Listen, Shirley, where can people find you, and where can they get the ebook?
So there's links to it on my website. There's a shop tab, and that is www.balancedbyshirley.com. And with the ebook, there's video tutorials and all that kind of stuff with the spreadsheets. So it's easy to work through it. I'm also on social media, on Instagram and on Facebook, and it's Balanced by Shirley.
But it sounds like that you practice that. I like it. Well, I know you've been on podcasts before.
I definitely didn't practice it, but yeah, I think you put so much time into your website and your marketing side of things, particularly when that's where people feel about money. That's what I feel about marketing. So.
Well, but it's perfect, isn't it? But Shirley, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today. It's been a while coming around, but I'm glad it did.
Yeah, thanks so much, Derek. It was great to talk to you.
That's all right. Listen, stay with me for a minute if you wouldn't mind. I'll just close this out and get a quick picture, and we'll be on our way for this hot day that's in it. All right.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, as always, to John for all the tech stuff that he did for me. Always thank the same people: my mom, my dad, granddad, Jared, and Calvin. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you would. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Yeah, that's the one. We're also on Apple, Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, etc. One day I won't have to read the copybook. I'll learn this off by heart. Maybe by the 140th episode, I might get there. But anyway, thanks very much to everyone for tuning in today. It was a really great chat. And once again, Shirley, thanks a million. And take care, everyone. See you next week. Bye.